This video is going to go through different types of flipped lessons that you can use in your classroom. The first type that I'm going to talk about is the one that I use most often in my classroom, and it's what I consider the traditional flip. In the traditional flip, students will go home and watch a video that you would normally give as a lecture in class. When they come back to class the next day, they can then go ahead and practice the topics that they learned in the video. Let's go ahead and just watch a short clip of a traditional video lecture that I've given my students. We're going to be focusing on angles and radian measure, and we're going to be talking a lot about the different vocabulary of angles and also the difference between degrees and radians. We'll go ahead and get started with our first objective, which is the vocabulary of angles. Now you'll notice that we're just taking an angle and we're placing it on an x, y axis. This is going to be an angle in what we call standard position. There's a few important things to notice here. The first is that the vertex of the angle is on the origin of our graph. So it's on the x on 0, 0. You can see in this video, I'm going to go through different objectives that I want the students to know. When they come back to class the next day, then we will go ahead and practice those objectives. The next type of flipped lesson I want to talk about is one I call the Perplexing and Summarizing lesson. In this case, you're going to start with an engaging activity in class that's created to help grab the student's attention. Now, in this lesson, they might not understand all of the ideas behind it, but it's to help them want to learn those ideas. Once you've gone through this activity, the students will then go home and watch a summary video. And in the summary video, they'll learn a little bit more about the ideas behind the lesson. Finally, they'll come back to class and practice. An example of a perplexing lesson I did in my class would be the record lesson. Now in this case, we started with a Calvin and Hobbes cartoon. And in this cartoon, Calvin's dad tells him that 2 points on a record actually travel at different speeds, even though they go the same revolutions per minute. This idea is angular speed versus linear speed, and that was the topic we were going through in class that day. So we started with the cartoon, and then I showed the students a video. In that video, we watched a record spin around, and we counted how many revolutions it went per minute. After that, we calculated, with ideas that we had learned previously in the chapter, the linear speed. Now, I never actually used those words linear speed and angular speed until the end of the lesson. When the students went home, they then watched a video that summarized those ideas. They also then learned the formal formulas that went with it, and I found that this was a much better way to present it rather than just giving the students the formulas in class. The last way you can use a flipped lesson in your classroom would be to review material. Now in this case, you might give a formative check in your class, and not all students will then have to go watch the video. It might just be students that had a difficult time or did not pass that formative assessment. Remember, these are just a few different ways you can use a flipped lesson in your classroom. There are many others.